Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope everyone tuning in out there is having a great day, and I appreciate you for listening to another one of these reviews. Before we get started, make sure you smash that subscribe button to stay up to date with our latest content. As I promised in my last video, I've taken a few days to gather my thoughts and write this review. We are going to be dipping into spoiler territory for anyone out there that's watching and may be wanting to avoid those. While my first impression video was longer than it should have been, one thing that hasn't changed over the past few days was my opinion of the film itself. In fact, I'm more excited to share specific examples in this review with you on what really makes Scream 7 a big disappointment for me. With the drama surrounding the loss of the two main roles in the previous two films, I went into this new entry keeping my expectations open to see where this new direction would take us. While the movie does bring back some familiar legacy characters, the only thing that was slashed and gutted was my enjoyment when I left the theaters. One positive thing that can be said is that this franchise is far from dead. Scream 7 is shattering box office records with an opening weekend of more than $97 million worldwide. The fan base for this franchise is far bigger than it has ever been, but it's also more at odds than ever as well. That's not to say this is a bad thing, because ultimately, more discussion leads to more exposure on the franchise itself. For me personally, Scream 7 cuts deep by preying on our nostalgia at a cost that stains the legacy of these characters themselves. Let's talk about it. Right from the start, we are thrown into the old Stu Macher house that's now this stabbed-themed Airbnb. We follow a couple as they explore different rooms and relive classic moments of the first film. I will say the animatronic Ghostface was a really nice modern touch. Even though it was predictable, it was really cool to come back later and see the real Ghostface standing in its place for a jump scare kill. Watching Ghostface's mask slowly be illuminated from the darkness behind the on-screen character was very tactful. Unfortunately, this is where the film already starts to reveal its flaws. For a franchise that takes pride in its ability to grab your attention from the start with spectacular intros, Scream 7 doesn't make the cut. What would have been a great kill scene full of suspense and tension was already spoiled by one of the trailers. To top that off, the intro ends with Ghostface burning down one of the most iconic locations, and my hopes for a decent film went up in flames with it. Even after the scene was over, I found myself clinging to it for all the wrong reasons. While I'm sure the writers would hope that this moment was impactful, I couldn't help but notice what a waste it was. One of the marketing posters for this movie had the caption, "Burn it all down" on it. We'll come back to this point at the end of my review, but the feeling of a complete waste is a common theme that we're going to stick with. We're introduced to Sidney Prescott, her daughter Tatum, and some of her friends. While living a quiet life, being a mother and owning a coffee shop, we see Sidney slowly started to rebuild her life. Sidney then gets a FaceTime call from Stu Macher, who is standing outside her daughter Tatum's high school theater. Before Sidney can get there, Ghostface has already killed two of Tatum's friends. One of the victims was swinging in the air by some rope attached to an onstage harness. I will say that I love seeing Ghostface manipulate the controls and have her swinging around the room. It does bring back a little bit of that psychological terror from the original films. While it does have great tension leading up to the kill, it's ruined by some bad CGI that quickly takes away the scene's impact. This leads me to one of my biggest complaints of the film. Tatum is constantly trying to connect with her mother on her past trauma, hoping that maybe she can learn to protect and defend herself from the same fate her mother experienced at her age. Around every corner and attempt, Sidney refuses to speak about her past. At one point, she even tells her daughter to read some books or look online if she wants any answers. This is absolutely the opposite of what any parent would do, in my opinion. It's not that Neve Campbell doesn't fulfill the role as Sidney Prescott. It's just that this version of Sidney isn't believable. After everything that Sidney has been through, having a daughter the same age as she was in the original film be unprepared for the horrors that life has to offer is just unbelievably stupid. It feels unnecessarily forced, and it's completely disgraceful to the character's identity itself. While I wasn't expecting a Halloween 2018 approach, where Sidney's relationship with her daughter was compromised from her past trauma, I expected her at the very least to show her daughter the path to becoming a survivor if it was ever needed. This ties into our theme of waste once again. What could have been such a strong example of Sidney's unwavering character following her into motherhood feels like it was thrown away for absolutely nothing. While the film continues to play out, we're introduced to more of these legacy characters. Stu Macher, Gale Weathers, as well as Mindy and Chad from the core four. As much as it pains me to say this, seeing Matthew Lillard return to play Stu Macher feels very off. I wouldn't say his acting was bad, but this AI approach they took just felt very soulless. You could tell he was trying to manifest the old Psycho Stu, but it never felt fulfilling, and at the end of the day, it just falls flat. This may be the point that they were going for, being that it's not actually really Stu. However, they want you to believe that it is the entire time, so that angle just doesn't justify the lackluster performance. Let's focus on Gale for just a moment. She is back just as insufferable as ever, and there's no other way we would have it. Every minute she is on screen, she is just as cruel, ferocious, and unforgiving as she's always been. And that's not a bad thing. It's this persona that the character has that's made its way into our hearts. We get this scene later in the film where Sidney finally decides to do an interview on live TV with Gale to bait the killer into calling. The chemistry between these two is just as intense and organic as it's always been. The problem is that just as quickly as Gale enters the movie, she practically disappears. What feels like a dynamic duo building up into a grand finale is squandered, and Gale conveniently only returns after the climax of the film. This carries over to Mindy and Chad as well. They're now acting as Gale's reporting assistants, and they eventually connect with Tatum and the group of her friends. While they both do a great job at reprising their roles, they are somehow taken out of commission quickly, despite being veterans with insane survival experience. Are we starting to see the pattern here yet? We are continually having our excitement diminished by having fan favorites return just to be taken away again. It's clear the writers of this film didn't have a clear idea of the direction they wanted to go with this soft reboot. Instead of taking the time to build a new foundation, they pull on our heart's nostalgic strings to fill the void of bad writing choices. I'm not saying we shouldn't have some of the characters return and breathe a new life into the franchise. What I am saying is instead of another solid entry, we have nothing but wasted potential that will leave us wishing for what this film could have been. There's so much to say about this film, but I want to try and keep everything compacted and together. When the two Ghostface are revealed, it completely ruins what makes this franchise as a whole so special. It's revealed that Sidney's neighbor wants to kill her for basically no longer being this strong-willed final girl. She read Sidney's book, killed her abusive husband, and spent time in a mental institution where she met her other accomplice. Sidney and Tatum eventually beat the both of them in such an underwhelming final showdown. The real disappointment for me, though, is the finale's reveal itself. The magic sauce of this franchise, to me, has always been the anticipation that builds up leading to the unmasking of Ghostface. Throughout each film, I've always become a detective myself, creating up my own list of suspects with matching motives. As the characters are killed off, the list gets even smaller and more excitement is created as we get closer to revealing who the killer is. That's what makes Scream what it is in the first place. It's like an adult slasher Scooby-Doo. There was always something so thrilling about the unmasking aspect of each Scream film. Even with Scream 2, I would have never put Billy Loomis's mom on my suspect list, but the reveal was truly shocking and satisfying. What we end up with here is the death of that pattern that we've all come to love. The only thing that was truly killed off by the end of this movie was my excitement for the direction that this franchise is heading in. The harsh, bitter truth is that the red herring the writers are trying to convince us to believe really would have made a better story than the story we end up with. While it may be cliche, having Sidney defeat Stu in the Macher house to save her daughter would have made perfect sense. They then could have set the house ablaze together, and it would have been a very fitting end. The slogan, "Burn it all down," would have perfectly fit this. Once again, we have such amazing potential that was wasted away for no clear reason at all. The real tragedy of Scream 7 wasn't the disappointing kills with really bad CGI and camera angles. It wasn't the classic tropes of villains with plot armor that defy logic or reasoning. The horror story that's being told here, in my opinion, is that the writers have forgotten what makes the Scream franchise so unique in the first place. The real killing blow that landed was the mishandling of our beloved characters to cover up the aimless direction that this movie's plot was headed towards. I'm giving Scream 7 a 6 out of 10. There was so much potential and hype built off the previous two films that resurrected this franchise from a decade slumber. At the end of the day for me, it's such a shame to see it all wasted away for cheap, nostalgic thrills that lead us nowhere in terms of storytelling. I'm not saying I'm not excited for Scream 8 and the possibilities that await Sydney and Tatum, but let's hope these writers go back to the roots of what makes Scream stand out from the other slashers. Who knows? Maybe this is all leading up to Stu's actual return, and Scream 8 will justify and change our minds on this film later down the road. Thanks for tuning in, and if you have any recommendations, observations, or criticisms of the film that I may have missed, make sure you leave those down in the comments below. As always, guys, make sure you stay safe out there, and more importantly, stay munchin', stay crunchin', and I'll see you next time. This is Swimming in Popcorn signing off.